When Disney and Marvel released She-Hulk Attorney at Law on Disney Plus last year, we were told the viewership numbers for it was actually pretty good, at least when you're comparing it to other Marvel shows on Disney Plus platform. However, when you step back from that and actually compare it to other shows on other streaming platforms, you can see that it didn't even break the top 10 on the Nielsen charts for its opening weekend, which just goes to show that a lot of the Marvel shows on the Disney Plus platform are not really well received amongst general audiences outside of just the coarse, ever shrinking Marvel fan base right now. And you can even compare that to the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes and see that, yeah, it's only a 32% for audiences, which just goes to show people didn't like this show one bit. However, there are going to be people trying to defend it out there for some reason and say that this is just negative review bombing. And if that's the case, then you would assume that there's going to be the positive review bombing too. I know it happens both ways. I'm not saying it never gets review bombed or nothing ever gets review bombed, but when you see the negatives outweigh the positives, it just goes to show that the negative reaction is far superior to the positive reaction to this. However, despite all of this, we were told last summer, at least according to rumors, that there was going to be a season 2 of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. At least once the writers and actors strike was going to be resolved, then it was supposed to be started for a season 2. But it's looking like that's actually not the case anymore. And while this isn't an official announcement, it is coming from the star of the show. So I do think it does carry a little bit more weight than rumors from various scoopers out there on the internet. According to She-Hulk actress Tatiana Maslany during a recent Twitch stream, a season 2 of She-Hulk Attorney at Law seems highly unlikely. Speaking during a Codenames Live, the new class stream, Maslany said she does not think the fans should expect a season 2, remarking with a dash of humor, the show blew its budget with season 1. Given this, she said that Disney was like, no thanks. And it's no joke that they blew the budget on the first season of She-Hulk, at least according to this article from Screen Rant. It was reported that it cost Disney $25 million per episode of She-Hulk. So when you factor that in for the whole season, it was $225 million for the season, which is quite a bit if you ask me. But at the same time, I will be a little bit fair and point out though that yes, there is a lot of CGI work that they needed to do for She-Hulk. So I can understand why there would be a big expenditure for that purpose. But at the same time, Disney is pretty wasteful when it comes to how much they spend on their Marvel properties. And that isn't just me saying this either. There's actually been a lot of people pointing that out lately. And even Marvel understands that they need to rein in their budgets because what they're doing isn't sustainable. And when you talk about She-Hulk specifically, there was a lot of problems with the show and the way they were trying to write it and pace it that they had to go back and redo a bunch of work on it in order to actually make it fit. And by doing that, it cost them a lot more money in post-production. In the original arc of She-Hulk, a flashback of star Tatiana Maslany's transformation into her She-Hulk character didn't take place until episode 8, the penultimate episode. But after Marvel's Brain Trust watched footage, it realizes a scene needed to happen in the pilot episode so that audiences could see more of her character's backstory early. And the article goes on to say that meant that the VFX team was tasked with fixing the mess in post-production. And it's a good thing that they understood that there was a problem with the structure of the story and moved to correct it before it actually premiered. The fact of the matter is, this is something that was easily avoidable if they actually had the proper pre-production phase of this. This article even points that out because, yeah, you're supposed to understand the structure of the story before you shoot anything. And Disney's approach of just shooting whatever you can, doing the VFX for it, and figuring out how it works in the edit may work if you're producing billion-dollar hits. The fact of the matter is they're not doing that anymore because they don't have the audience for that anymore. And that's a whole other issue I'll get to in a moment. But if they want to continue to be profitable, they need to tighten their belt and actually do things the way you're supposed to be doing, which is to figure out your story before you start shooting anything. The so-called bad VFX we see was because of half-baked scripts, says one person involved with She-Hulk. That is not Victoria. And they're referring to Victoria Alonso, who was previously the president of Marvel's VFX department, who was also fired because of a lot of the bad results they've been seeing lately. That is Kevin, and even above Kevin, those issues should be addressed in pre-production. The timeline is not allowing the Marvel executives to sit with the material. And this is where bad movie fatigue or superhero fatigue comes into play, because the studios will say it's superhero fatigue in that they mean people just aren't excited about superhero movies anymore because there's too many. And a lot of people will say it's bad movie fatigue because the movies that are coming out are just bad movies. And it is kind of a combination of the two, where the movies are bad because there's so many of them that they can't actually give them the proper care that they deserve. Now, if they were producing things in the same volume, but the quality was of like, let's say Marvel Phase 1, then they probably would be doing pretty good right now. But the fact of the matter is they're not, and they need to do something quick in order to change course. Marvel has been pushing back a lot of the release dates, and I think in this year they only have a few things coming out. So they're saying they're trying to tone down the content or the volume of content that they're producing. But that's literally just a result of the strikes, because next year they're going to be producing just as amount of stuff as they were before. So they really haven't learned their lesson. And also they need to really fix one of the big issues that they have, and that's actively trying to chase away their fan base. Now, from a business standpoint, I can understand if you're trying to open up your market to another fan base. In the case with She-Hulk, they're trying to bring in more women viewers because men tend to watch comic book movies more than women. So if they wanted to introduce more women or make something for them, that's fine. But you have to understand, when you're going to do something like that, you don't want to alienate the fan base that you do have. If you're trying to increase your market cap, you don't get rid of a segment of your audience in order to try to bring in another audience. What you do is you try to maintain that audience and try to bring in more people. And they didn't do that. In fact, they got idiot writers and producers on this who are actively attacking the fan base that they had. And I mean, it's one thing to inadvertently alienate a fan base because you were trying to appease another group. It's another to try to actively push one away in order to bring in another one. And as we can see, the man-hating feminist types just isn't a viable market for this sort of thing. So it's just a matter of whether studios are going to understand that and go back to producing things that general audiences can enjoy, or are they going to try to pander to these cultists out there and continue to lose money. I'm hoping they learn their lesson and correct course, but by doing that, you need to get rid of a lot of the executives at these studios and fire a lot of these writers. And I think we might see that in the near future. It's just a matter of who's left standing when that actually happens.